In this video, we are going to talk about Epic Universe. Are fans excited for the park itself, or are they more excited for what it might do to Disney in terms of kind of spurring competition? We're also going to talk about the Halloween events at all the theme parks, you know, what's good, what's not, our favorites. And we're also going to break down this new Tomorrowland. Well, not this new Tomorrowland. We're going to break down a potential hypothetical new Tomorrowland. When are we looking at a new Tomorrowland at Disneyland? There's a lot right now on the plate for the resort. Is it even in the next 5 years, decade? We're going to break it down up next on OG 55. Welcome aboard to another episode of OG 55. I have a fantastic panel with me today. First time on the channel talking theme parks with us, Josh, Modern Mouse. Usually, Josh, you're joining us for all the studio stuff, Story Geeks and what have you. So it's really good to have you on right now to talk some theme parks with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited. I actually got started like doing media online, doing theme park stuff. The original Modern Mouse podcast was all theme parks. I never talked about films or TV. I slowly transitioned into that. So it's always nice to get back to my roots and talk about the parks.
Absolutely. It's good to have you, sir. If you could let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media.
Sure. You find me at Modern Mouse Josh on all of the socials, or you can check out my YouTube channel, Modern Mouse, youtube.com/Modern Mouse, where I talk about films and television, animation, and majority Disney stuff.
Awesome. Check him out. I'll link everything down below so everyone can click on it and subscribe and follow Josh. He does fantastic content, a lot of great insight on Twitter. So definitely show him some love. Down below, I got Citrus George, host of our Walt Disney World show, Citrus Corner, here on the channel. George, welcome back, sir.
Thanks for having me, and glad to be talking some shop with you fellas. It's going to be a great show. But if everyone wants to find me, you could do so on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Disney George. You could also check out the podcast I'm part of called A Walk with Walt. And of course, you'll find me here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner, with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
Absolutely. All right, let's dive right into our topics at hand. So let's talk some Epic Universe. This is a big deal. This is a big deal. In the summer of 2025, this thing is going to open, and it's not just the park. There's like a hotel element. There are hotels and all kinds of stuff, like its own little resort over there. So I'll start with you, Josh. A lot of the narrative, a lot of the talk, at least like on Twitter and things like that, I see is like, whenever Epic Universe is sort of mentioned, right, it's always like in this context of like, what's Disney's response going to be? Is it going to motivate Disney to do better, to build better things, do better? Like, I see a lot of that attached to these conversations. So my question to you, do you believe that there's legitimate enthusiasm for the park itself, or do you feel fans are more enthusiastic about what kind of, like, what ripple effect it'll have in relation to the Orlando theme park market and like Disney itself in terms of competition?
I think there's I think it's both, right? I think that there's a split. There's definitely, I talked about this on, doing, when we were talking about animation in previous show, like there's this kind of like social media has created like these weird bubbles. You have all these like weird Facebook groups where people like talk about stuff or whatever, but like, there are people that are really tribalistic about Disney. Anything that Universal could do doesn't impress them because they are Disney diehards. However, if you look at the Orlando scene, especially in the last decade, we're in, whether you want to believe it or not, probably one of the best times for theme parks in general. Not only is Universal stepped up to the plate in the last decade and a half maybe, but even SeaWorld is trying to compete at the same level. Busch Gardens trying to compete at level. Obviously, they're not at that level, but like they are upping their own game in their own way. Competition creates, plenty for everybody, and it really, you don't want a monopoly in the theme park industry. And so I think a lot of people are excited about the Universal expansion with Epic Universe, but they're also excited that Disney, can maybe compete or have somebody to compete with on a more strict scale. Like we have in California, we have Universal Hollywood, which will never be at the same level that Universal Orlando is, because that competition doesn't exist in the same way.
Right.
And so I would, the comparison, I guess, really for California might be like Knott's Berry Farm, which is a few miles down the road from Disney. And they're probably the best of the Cedar Fair parks because they put a lot of attention into that park in particular. So I think it's a good thing that Epic Universe is coming. I think a lot of people are excited about the park. I personally am excited as like a horror fan. I'm excited about seeing some more of the classic monsters all year round. But I think this is a good thing. And the people that are kind of more tribalistic, I think that they should see this as a good thing as well, because Disney's going to have a response. They have to have a response. They need to continue to compete or else they'll fail.
What do you think, Mr. George, in terms of where's the enthusiasm? Is it with Disney's response to Epic Universe, or is it Epic Universe itself, or is it what Josh was saying, where it's maybe a little bit of both, maybe?
Yeah, I agree with Josh. I think it's a little bit of both, depending on what spectrum you're kind of looking at, of like what group you kind of title yourself as. Like those diehard Universal fans, it's like you cannot change their mind for anything. Like Epic Universe is going to be quote unquote epic. It's going to change the theme park industry forever. Disney is in a rude awakening, so on and so forth. It's almost like the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, times 1,000 for this park. I do think it's going to be successful, but I still feel like it's not going to be to the caliber where a lot of people feel like it's going to one-up Disney. I feel like there'll be certain departments where it'll one-up Disney for the time being, but then I also feel like there's the category of fans that say, you know what? Competition is good. It's healthy. It keeps you on your toes. And it very well could, wake Disney up to say, you know what, we got to get things moving along here, which beckoned the call for them to do Pandora, after Universal opened up the Wizarding World, because they announced Avatar 1 year after Wizarding World opened. And it took 4, 5, 6 years for it to open, and then along with Galaxy's Edge and what have you. So, and I think Disney is actually waiting for that as well. I feel like Disney is not going to put any money out if they really don't feel the need to. So if they feel like a little bit of a threat is coming from Universal to say, hey, you know what, we're losing fans. Okay, now we could actually put out money. And that right. May be why Tomorrow is kind of stalling with this what ifs or maybe coming to the park, because he may be waiting for Universal to make that first move so then they can make their move back.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I agree with both of you fellas. I do think it's a mixture of both. I do think there's a general enthusiasm for the park. I think a lot of that is directed at the Donkey Kong attraction, which I think everyone agrees sounds really, really dope. I think there's a genuine interest and enthusiasm and curiosity for Epic Universe. I also do think a big element of it is, okay, this is going to light the fire under Disney. Now, the only thing is that I would caution fans is kind of, I've seen a lot of this. I actually have a tweet, and I blocked out the names because I'm not trying to go after anybody, but mostly just an example of kind of what I'm trying to say here. This person was saying, this park looks incredible, and this should have Disney quaking. This is at least a 3-day park and is going to suck up so much of Disney business. Now, here's the thing. Like, there's no way that, Epic Universe is going to be amazing, I think. I think it's going to be a really good park. It won't be a 3-day park, though. You know what I'm saying? And I think this is kind of where fans kind of fall into this trap where it's like, I think they're thirsty for something really, really good, right? And they want to sort of like to motivate Disney because they love Disney too. But I think in that whole process, I think it's very, very important to sort of like also not go overboard with the expectations as to what this thing will do, because ultimately that doesn't help Epic Universe either. So when fans are going out there saying this is going to be a 3-day park and the whole thing, you're setting it up for failure because there's no way. Disneyland itself is one of the most stacked theme parks in the world in terms of e-tickets, attractions, ride count, all that stuff. And even Disneyland, I would argue, isn't a 3-day park, right? And
I will say that maybe they meant a 3-day resort because, you know, with 3 different parks, plus a water park, maybe that's what they meant, which I could agree with to an extent. Yeah. Here's actually, I want to bring this up to you guys. Sorry, I interrupted you. I didn't mean to.
No, you're good. You're good.
I feel like this is on my mind when you were saying this. The problem that I kind of have with this isn't that, you know, people are like excited about this. I totally am on board with being excited about this. However, has Universal actually, and to a certain extent, maybe Disney down in Florida, the problem with continuing to build is that it feels like there's now a bit of neglect on some of the past parks. Islands of Adventure is a great, I love the park, but you can't deny that Seuss Landing really needs either to be something different or it needs a sprucing up. Marvel Island is, I mean, it's probably in its dying days, I would assume. The Toon Lagoon, who visits that, you know? And then, you know, there are big sections of Universal Studios Park in Orlando that still feel like it needs help. Yeah. So, and you could say the same for Disney. I think that Hollywood Studios has its issues. Epcot has been under construction for years now and still doesn't feel like it's reaching the levels they wanted it to. Is too many parks a bigger problem in the long run?
Where you're spreading yourself thin, right? You have the resources here, and now you're adding another park into the equation. So a lot of this other stuff might get left behind. Well, go ahead, George.
Oh, no. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Absolutely. No, Josh, I actually have a question for you because you mentioned that. I agree with you. Islands of Adventure, I feel like the last time when I went there, it felt very dated. You know, if you walk in there, it screams like early 2000s, you know. So could this be Universal's strategy to open up Epic Universe so that way it'll kind of take the spotlight off of Islands of Adventure for a major overhaul? Because they're definitely going to need it.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely possible. To be honest, like, I think, and I said this before to some people when they were talking about Epcot and a few years ago, and the kind of rebranding of Epcot with the totally different lands and like the total rebuilding of what Future World was, with 4 theme parks and, you know, 2 water parks, the whole resort. I don't think that it would have been a bad idea to have actually shut down the whole front end of Epcot. Don't let anyone come past World Showcase. The only way you could enter World Showcase is from the International Gateway. And so in that way, you completely restrict that entire front half of Epcot, allowing for construction to probably go a bit faster. And so I could see the same thing happening here where you have this brand new park. It takes away a bit of the attendance from Islands of Adventure, and then it's easier to shut down more spaces of that park in order to build it a bit faster. I think going back to, like, you know, 2020 when park attendance was fairly low because of obvious reasons, you know, we saw a Velocicoaster kind of go from 0 to 60 really quickly because they didn't really have to fight with a lot of people doing construction. George, you might be onto something there.
That's interesting. So Josh, you feel, and I've been saying this for a long time, I've talked to George a lot about it on these videos and stuff, but you feel like there could be some cannibalization here. Like I think there might be, to be honest with you, because I think okay, so Epic Universe is going to be great. I think we all agree on that. Islands of Adventure is a solid park. I think the weakest of the 3 would probably be the studio park. So do you think it's a good chance that, like, when this thing opens, that, like, that studio park will be the one that gets cannibalized? Or do you think it'll be, how do you think that's going to work out? Or if any of them will be cannibalized?
I'm not sure. I think as you spread thinner, you know, like, eventually, maybe not soon, but eventually park attendance is going to hit a peak and not go past it. We're seeing that with streaming services.
Yeah.
We're seeing they hit their peak, and then they're like, hey, we put out a new show, we're gonna get so many subscribers, and then they don't, because there's not enough people to keep doing it. So it will maybe cannibalize their own business a bit, but I think moving the chess pieces, playing smart, being able to open something over here, work on something over here, and then while this is done, people then go back over here and maybe work on this over here. So there has to be a strategy to it.
Absolutely. It's almost like, when is too much too much? It's like, where is like the boundary where, like, even like when people talk about Disney, it's like, oh, I wish Disney would make a fifth gate at Walt Disney World. It's like, Walt Disney World does not need a fifth gate. If anything, that will completely drown it, to the fact, because they already have 4 parks that already need a lot of work and expansion to them. It's like, why add another park to that? And OG had made that point how many times? How much time can a family take off of work or school or what have you? Because the bigger that these resort complexes get, the longer stay you would have to stay. Now, one can argue to say that's what kind of entices people to come back. So it's like, if we don't get to do this, then we'll have to book for another vacation. But due to the economy, it's like, well, how many times can you actually do that within a 5-year period?
Yeah. The growth potential at Disney World is limited, I think, because you are kind of maxed out with the days already, how many days a family can spend. Or Disneyland Resort, I think, could handle a third gate much easier, because right now Disneyland Resort is only like maybe a 2-day resort, maybe 3 if you really want to stretch it out. But it's easier to add another day or 2 to that, I think, realistically, for families, where Disney World that's an endeavor. And that's not even including all the Universal stuff. So if you're going to do all the Disney World stuff and you're going to hit up the Universal stuff, you're talking a really long vacation. So there's not like physical growth. It's endless over there at Disney World, but like that financial growth that, those percentages, the hotel occupancies and all that, I don't know how much growth they have there. So it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see how this whole thing with Epic Universe pans out. I mean, it's coming up now. We're talking like a year and a half. I mean, it's really coming. It's coming up quick. So it's going to change. I think it's going to change things, and it's going to be. I'm very curious. I really want to see how it changes Disney, how it changes Universal. Will Disney respond to it? Will they not respond to it? Or the strategy going forward?
And I think that the biggest change would be for this is because Epic Universe will be the first theme park added to the roster since, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Islands of Adventure.
Well, they had Volcano Bay a few years ago. That's the water park,
right? Okay, so I mean, as far as like for theme parks go, like just in general in the Orlando area, wasn't Islands of Adventure the last theme park that was built after Animal Kingdom in '98?
I believe so.
Possibly, because when did Legoland open?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure what year that opened, but that might have been after. You're right.
Which I'll be honest, I would not sleep on like SeaWorld and Legoland. Like, I think that they provide something different. Obviously, again, if you're a family of 4 and you're spending a ton of money to go to Walt Disney World, you're probably not going to get to those parks, or maybe very rare amounts of people are going to get to those parks. But SeaWorld, has added Sesame Street to their roster, and that's a huge brand. Peppa Pig, huge brand, going in with, I think Legoland owns that, I believe. So even those places are stepping up their game. And I think that hopefully, they don't get cannibalized in all of this. The monopolization of the theme park industry is not what we want. We want kind of a healthy competition. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what will eventually happen, but I am excited for Epic Universe to open. I think it'll be a unique experience to see what they've decided to build there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very curious about the Donkey Kong thing, and actually the Monsters area that you mentioned too.
Yeah.
Because I think that Monsters area, I think if done right, could be very, very cool. I'm picturing like almost like a like a darker, more twisted, like Wizarding World with the cobblestone streets and the kind of the gothic, architecture and stuff. And if they go that route,
I think more of like the if anybody's been on like the Hollywood backlot tour at Universal Hollywood, they have like this old European village, which is where they used to shoot stuff like Frankenstein and Dracula and things like that. So I could see like a little kind of quaint German-esque European village with maybe some darker tones, some like darker coloring to go with it. And I think it'll still have some family-friendly elements. Obviously, you don't want it to be horror nights every night of the year. I'm sure there are some Horror Nights fans that would love that, but you've also got 8-year-old kids that are going to come to this park because of Nintendo, and you don't want to scare them off too bad.
Yeah, no, 100%. So we're going to pivot now to Halloween at theme parks. I think this is kind of interesting because George and I, we recently went to Oogie Boogie Bash. It was my first time ever going to the event. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was really cool.
I went last year first time. You
went last year first time? And George, you've been a couple times now, right?
This year was my third time.
Third time. Okay. So Josh, now you've been to Boogie Bash. You've done the Halloween Horror Nights over at Universal as well?
Let's see. I've done all of the major theme parks. So I've done Universal Orlando Horror Nights, Universal Hollywood Horror Nights.
Wow.
Knott's Scary Farm. The Queen Mary in Long Beach has their own event. It used to be the Dark Harbor. Now it's Shacktoberfest. And then Oogie Boogie Bash. Yeah.
Okay. And of all events, because you've been to a lot of them, you've been to way more than I have. I mean, what one for you? Which one do you feel is kind of like the best that kind of works for you personally?
My personal preference tends to gear towards Knott's Scary Farm. I'm a Knott's Scary Farm apologist. Like, I love that park to death. It's very DIY punk rock, which is like my background in life, and kind of like what I believe. But it's different flavors for different people, right? If you're much more into intellectual properties, then Horror Nights is for you. My issue with Horror Nights is that everything is soundtracked. So the monsters that, the scare actors that are in the mazes don't typically talk to you because they've got a voice track that they've got to match their mouths with. A lot of the scares to me from Universal tend to come from the same places. I can kind of predict where the jump scares are going to come from mazes. Although I will say their scare zones in Orlando are fantastic. Hollywood, not so much. But the great thing about Scary Farm is that all of the characters, all of the scare actors come back year after year. They have actually developed personalities for these characters, developed names for these characters.
Cool.
Fans for a long time will go back and be like, oh, that's Billy. Billy is, he used to be the local barber in the ghost town, and now he's dead and he's longing for his lover or whatever the case is, right? Like if you want to get into it that deeply, you can. But if you don't, that's fine too. You can just go and have a good time, and the scare actors will talk to you, will introduce themselves. You can take photos with them. There's an element of that that's really fun, and being able to have that one-on-one interaction more than just passing through a story. And all of the original stories to Knott's are perfect. I love all the additions that they have this year. And then the other one that I love is at the Queen Mary Shacktoberfest, which was run by Shaquille O'Neal. It sounds silly. It kind of is. It's more or less, I wouldn't say it's as scary as the other things. I would say it's much more of a party, a celebration of Halloween. They hand out trick-or-treats to kids. There's big, giant, inflatable, bouncy pumpkins. There are some haunted houses. There's also food trucks, and it feels more like a cool Halloween-themed carnival that Shaquille O'Neal is DJing at.
That's awesome. Yeah, it all depends on what's your flavor. Like if you have a 5-year-old or something, you're probably going to go to Boogie Bash, right? And go
Right.
something like that. If you're a teenager or you're in your early 20s, it's probably going to be more not Scary Farm or Halloween Horror Nights or even that Shacktober thing. So it all depends on what everyone's, their preference, their personality, their life situation. I haven't been to Scary Farm yet. I might actually go this Sunday. I'm actually going this Sunday to Knott's for the first time since I was 10 years old, believe it or not.
Whoa.
It's been a long time. So I think we might do Scary Farm after. I'm not really sure. But I mean, even just going to the park, I'm really excited because I haven't been there in such a long time, and it's a charming park and it's different. And it's like, it's big enough where they have a budget, but it feels like it's also small enough where it has like you said, it's kind of punk rock, right? It's kind of like, it kind of has that little edge to it. So I'm very, very curious. But I love Boogie Bash. We went the other night. We had a fantastic time over there. I thought it was really cool. The parade was awesome. Way busier than I expected it to be honest with you. For an upcharge event, I was like, wow, this place is packed. And this is like everyone's paying to get in there. You can't use your magic key to get in, So I was kind of surprised by that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think at this time in my life right now, I'm a little older. Probably Boogie Bash, a little more low key. I think the scare thing, I'm kind of beyond that. I did the one in Universal years ago when I was in my late teens, and we had fun. We had a good time, But even that's been a while for me. Now, George, okay, so you've been to Boogie Bash a few times. Have you? You've only been to Universal once, right? Or
I haven't done any of the other like Halloween events outside of Disney. I have done Mickey and Minnie's not so scary Halloween party down in Magic Kingdom.
Okay.
So just in comparison with that, with Oogie Boogie Bash, I still prefer Oogie Boogie over Not So Scary. I think it's just more so because it's geared towards the villains themselves rather than it be like a kind of cutesy party with the Fab Five. I do think it's really cool with the Hocus Pocus stage show, and I still enjoy the parade and everything, but I love how Oogie Boogie dedicates the party specifically for the villains, and they just keep on adding new villains and new treat trails. And then especially the Villains Grove. I mean, that thing is phenomenal.
It's a work of art. It's an absolute work of art. Yeah. I love that thing. So.
Now, kind of going back on this subject, but kind of connecting back to our last topic. Okay. Do either of you feel like with Epic Universe, could they essentially transition the Horror Nights into there because they're going to have the classic Universal Monster Land there? And do you think that would kind of take away some of the limelight out of the studio park, which is already in dire need to have more people in it?
Well, I think there's a definitely a desire by Universal to do a Horror Nights, I think, or some version of that at Epic Universe. From what I've read about this park, is the lands are designed where they can kind of cordon off each land and have like an individual event in that land. So it's designed for that purpose. Brian Roberts said that like on many of these quarterly earnings calls, and for Comcast. So I think there's a desire to have events in that, like for like say the Monsters area, to have some sort of Halloween thing in there, right? So they can cordon it off and have like an adult only like Halloween party, and the rest of the park doesn't get affected by it. There's a desire to that. I don't know though. You bring up an interesting point though, George. Will something like that affect the Horror Nights in the other park? I don't know. What do you think about that, Josh? Do you think that the two can coincide? Or, I mean, it's a popular event, so there's a lot of demand. So maybe it can withstand having it in both. Maybe not. What do you think?
I think, well, they used to do, this must have been right when Islands of Adventure opened in its first few years. They did it in both parks. They had it, simultaneously in both Universal Studios and Islands of Adventure. With the addition of the Monsters area of Epic Universe, I don't see why they wouldn't want to do something there.
Right.
But I think that there is a possibility to start innovating something different. You've got this whole audience that loves Horror Nights. It's what they live and die for all year long. But could you have obviously Horror Nights is already kind of an upcharge event. But could you have a more upcharged event from that? Could you have a more specific land-only oriented thing that is geared towards those people that are very into Horror Nights? obviously I don't want to make the comparison because it failed, but like, Star Wars, like Galactic Cruiser type of thing,
Right.
where it's maybe more of this immersive, theatrical type of experience more so than Horror Nights. I would love to see them innovate something unique and different that we haven't seen before, because for Knott's Berry Farm it's their 50th anniversary of doing a haunted theme park, and really the formula hasn't changed that much. Scare zones, mazes, maybe some themed food and drink, and that's kind of the formula that everybody uses. So I would love to see them innovate and do something slightly different.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're right, and that they have an opportunity there with Epic Universe to do that, to bring something that's much more unique, much different. Like you said, for the monsters area, I think you have the right idea, Josh, where you're going to want to go for like the diehards, and you can go really, really crazy in that land and get really gory and just nuts, right? And then you can have like the traditional Horror Nights over there at the other park. But that's interesting. Yeah, I think they're gonna do something though. Go ahead.
This is just me spitballing an idea. So anybody listening from Universal, feel free to use this. But I don't know if you guys remember failed theme park, the Holy Land experience.
Oh yeah, they recently just bulldozed that thing, right, or something.
They just bulldozed it, yeah. And there's also I forget the name of the park. It's in France, but there's a park in France that has no rides. It's all shows, and you show up. And it kind of has like you look at kind of your time sheet and you get to choose what shows you go to. I think that's the Holy Land experience was kind of similar. That's why I bring it up. But I think you could go to a land, right, and get a time card and be able to kind of have like a choose your own adventure book of what shows do I want to have. And then at the end of the night, it kind of culminates in one large epic theatrical scene. I think that would be a ton of fun to be able to have that. I'm not walking through a maze, but I'm, seeing things happening here and there and getting to choose what adventure I do. And in that way, it would have a repeatability because I didn't choose this path. Next time I come, I'll choose that one instead of the one I did.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome, man. Yeah, they could do things like that, right? They can change it up and kind of do that where it's a different kind of offering. Yeah. I wouldn't even mind, like, honestly, if Universal kind of like maybe not for Epic Universe, but for maybe like the Studio Park or maybe better Islands of Adventure, where they kind of take the Oogie Boogie Bash route and kind of do like a family Halloween event too, that to kind of go to coincide with the Horror Nights and the other ones. So they have options over there, and I think they're going to play with some stuff.
Hosted by the Minions.
Yeah, by the Minions. Actually, it's funny, George. The Minions actually have really cute. I don't know if they do it here because I haven't been at Universal for Halloween in a long time, but I think I saw it like for Japan, where the Minions have like their little Halloween costume. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I've seen that.
Now, I'm not a huge Minion fan, but I gotta say those are pretty adorable. I'd probably take a picture with every one of them. It's really cute. But we'll see. We'll see how this whole thing pans out. But let's pivot to our next topic, our last and final topic, which is a new Tomorrowland at Disneyland. This is like the evergreen topic, right? Like, is this thing ever going to come? Are we ever going to get this thing? And we have a lot of things on the table, a lot of moving parts right now. We got Disneyland Forward. That's a big thing. Disney's, a lot of the it's sucking a lot of the air out of the room for the resort because it's a huge thing politically and all stuff. Obviously we have, Disney kind of on the downturn financially a little bit, after the pandemic, all that stuff. So that's an element. We also have this, just a few months ago, Bob Iger came out and said that we're going to get some sort of Avatar experience. And depending on what that is, if it's going to be a land of some sort, that's also probably going to push back any new Tomorrowland. But Josh, I'll start with you. Oh, go ahead, George.
I was just going to say, if I could actually take this one.
Yeah, go ahead. You go first.
So we've heard speculation, coming from different outlets, that we're going to hear at the D23 Expo, we're going to get this major overhaul of Tomorrowland or what have you. Never happened. It's like on the front burner, it's on the back burner. Honestly, I'm anticipating the second coming of Christ before we get a new Tomorrowland. So it's like, but for me, I feel like the reason why this is such a hindrance for Disney is because of the overall aesthetic of what Tomorrowland is. So by the time they come up with a concept, they get it down on paper, they green light it, they do construction. For how long it actually takes Disney to actually complete the project,
Right.
then the tomorrow that they're seeing now will then be in the past. And it's like, how many times can you really update it for it to stay relevant? So I really feel like that Disney should kind of get out of that tomorrow aspect and kind of do like how Disneyland Paris does with like the Discovery. They kind of have like that Jules Verne type of steampunk type of mentality where then they can kind of keep it relevant, so no matter which way they decide to change it or alter it as years go on, it won't be too much of a hindrance of saying, okay, well, what's the span of time for this to be titled as, oh, this is the future, this is tomorrow. It's set in one set time. And I also feel too that with, as you had mentioned, OG, with the Disneyland Forward and what have you, I feel like that Disney is going to kind of lean more towards Disney California Adventure for their expansion. I feel like right now Disneyland is at a decent position where it can kind of hold its own before they do any major changes, and to then kind of close off that park, because I mean you could say to do it off in sections, but that's going to really hinder the traffic flow throughout the park. So I feel like, in my opinion, I don't really think we're going to see a new Tomorrowland anytime soon. I feel like we're going to get more of the expansion of DCA. And to be quite honest, I'm actually going to go balls to the wall with this. I actually feel like that we would see a third gate at Disneyland before a new Tomorrowland.
That is pretty bold. That is pretty bold. And I mean, there really isn't that much incentive for Disney to dive into new Tomorrowland right now, because everything, I mean, look, for how weak as the land looks, the stuff in the land still hits. Like Space Mountain is still one of the most popular things in the park. The Buzz Lightyear thing gets a lot of crowds. Star Tours gets a lot of crowds. You know, I mean, Nemo even, you know, I mean, it's still bringing people in, right? So yeah, I mean, we'll see. I think it's probably at least a decade away, though. What do you think, Josh?
Here's my hot take. It's already started.
Oh, interesting. Okay. What do you mean by that?
So when we think about a land demo or whatever, a refurbishment of a land, typically it means like, they're going to close it off or whatever. Do what they did kind of with Epcot. It becomes a giant land of walls. Yeah. However, in the past month or so, they closed down Space Mountain, and it's been down for a good amount of time. I think that people, you're right in the sense that the attractions aren't bad, although I think some of them could either be updated or go away. But I think the core of the attractions is fine. It's the aesthetically appealing architecture that is not up to par.
Right.
They are putting a fresh new coat of paint currently on Space Mountain, that 1960s mid-century white. They've kind of remodeled in the past few years the Tomorrowland Terrace that's over there. I think that they are not going to announce anything, which I think is smart on Disney's part. I think that they are going to piece by piece put together the classic on the move Tomorrowland from the 60s, and be able to then, the big announcement will come when they can say, we're either extending the monorail station to a third gate, which would be, where the Toy Story parking lot might be, or to the, what we all kind of think is something over by the Disneyland Hotel, or the People Mover will reopen and again be something that will expand past the park. I think that'll be the new thing. But I think that they are setting up Tomorrowland currently to get that brand new paint job it's been needing for a long time. Yeah. And then maybe replace some of those attractions individually one by one, but not make a big announcement of this is what we're doing with Tomorrowland. I think Disney's actually learned their lesson in the past decade that they continually overpromise with concept artwork and under deliver time length wise and under deliver on the promises of what, their blue sky announcements are.
Right.
So in that way, maybe Tomorrowland is coming just slightly piece by piece. And I think it starts with what they're doing now with Space Mountain.
It's interesting you say that, Josh. And I think you're onto something with that, because they kind of did something similar, or are doing something similar with New Orleans Square. We saw a big change up a few years back with Club 33 and that whole area, right? They remodeled that whole thing. They expanded Club 33. And then a few years ago, they did that Pelican. I don't know what the official name of it is.
I think it's Pelican Landing. Yeah.
Pelican Landing. They added that to the water, right? Then recently we just got Tiana's Palace, right? And then we just got word that they're going to expand the Haunted Mansion queue. So really, we've gotten almost a new New Orleans Square in the past decade. They didn't announce it officially, but piece by piece, they've been renovating and changing that up. So you're probably right with this, where like Tomorrowland, they're not going to give like, okay, now we're going to have a new Tomorrowland. It's probably going to be, okay, Buzz Lightyear is going to get replaced or redone or reimagined, and that'll be one part of it. And then maybe in a few years, something will go into the launch bay, and that'll be part of it. And then we'll wake up in 10 years and be like, oh wait, it's a new land now, right? Like piece by piece. That's interesting. And
in that way, to George's credit, right? You're not building a new Tomorrowland and it's already dated. You can kind of just slowly, piece by piece, rebuild it and remodel it, and even pivot if need to be. Right. I'm sure the idea of New Orleans Square and how it is now didn't come together all at once. They built piece by piece and pivoted where they needed to go. With the addition of Tiana's, obviously that then kind of expands New Orleans Square. And then what do they do with Winnie the Pooh? They're not announcing anything about it, because maybe that becomes its own little Pooh Corner back there. And maybe they expand Pooh Corner, or maybe they continue to bulldoze that and that all becomes New Orleans Square. We don't know, but I think that's actually more exciting than anticipating something that just under-delivers in the long run.
Yeah, that's smart. That's absolutely brilliant. I think that might be the route they're going to take, because we're seeing it in real time right now with other areas of the park. So fantastic conversation, guys. Josh, always a pleasure having you on, man. Anytime you want to come on and talk theme parks or story geeks or whatever it is, you're always welcome, brother. So thank you so much for taking your time to come on and join us today.
So Josh, I have a question for you. Were you excited to come on and talk theme parks with us, or were you more excited that Jay was not present?
I tell people this all the time. If I'm not giving you a hard time, something's probably wrong with our friendship. I'm the kind of person that sarcasm is built into me. My dad is the kind of person who would do that kind of crap to me, and it just is in my blood.
That's awesome.
But I'm truly excited to talk about theme parks, especially since my roots came from theme park podcasting, and I don't really get the chance to do it that much anymore. I still visit a lot of theme parks. Last night I was at Knott's Scary Farm. 2 or 3 days before that, I was at Disneyland. Nice. So I'm constantly at theme parks. I love them to death. I just my focus these days, monetarily wise, is on the films and television side of things.
Cool. Nice. Well, speaking of that, if you could let everybody know where they can find you on social media, your YouTube channel, all that good stuff, sir.
Yeah. If you're interested in animation, Muppets, family entertainment, things like that, youtube.com/Modern Mouse. I'm working on actually a video coming out really soon. I'll tease it here. Is about Mousercise and the 1980s aerobics craze, and how socioeconomical all of that kind of goes together, and how just really bizarre it was that there was a Mickey Mouse exercise show on TV for I think it was on for almost 15 years. Crazy. But so that video is coming down the pipeline. I'm really excited about it. But you can follow me on all the socials, where I'll probably update people on that video coming out soon, at Modern Mouse Josh, X, Instagram, and TikTok.
Awesome. I'll definitely be checking out that Mousercise video. I was like that age when that was out. I was a young kid in the 80s, and I used to watch that all the time. With the I forgot her name, with the blonde hair and
Kellyanne Plachette.
Yes, yes. And then Mickey and Donald will come out. That was a great show. Old school Disney Channel was like so chef's kiss. I love all that stuff. George, you're a huge Dumbo Circus. You were a Dumbo Circus fan,
Dumbo
right?
Circus.
Oh
fan.
yeah, I was Dumbo Circus, Welcome to Pooh Corner. Like it was like all that like also. I mean, you look back at it now and you see like those outfits, like they were like funky looking. But I mean,
Yeah.
back in the time, it was like the coolest thing ever. You know,
Great.
and like old school Disney Channel, like that was like. There's times where I go on YouTube and I watch these people's videos that they upload, like old episodes or just commercials
Right.
from the Disney Channel. It's like, man, that takes me back.
Oh, it's fantastic. I do the same thing. When I'm working, I'll have it on the background or something, you know. But George, if you could let everybody home know where they can find you on social media, sir.
Absolutely. You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Disney George. You could also check out the podcast I'm part of called A Walk with Walt. And of course, you'll find me here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
Perfect. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for joining me today, talking parks, and thank you all for watching. Comment down below with all your thoughts on Epic Universe, New Tomorrowland, Halloween at theme parks. We would love to hear from you. And as always, have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye-bye, everybody.